You're tuning in to the J Blast Network. Oh yeah, this is happening. Tune in or tune out. The battle was on in 1994. The Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis were head-to-head fighting for a spot in someone's home by releasing classics back-to-back. Some may say that Nintendo had the advantage with releasing legendary titles like Donkey Kong Country, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and Mega Man X, and of course the upcoming Super Mario World 2. However, Sega should not be left out of this conversation because they had some bangers too. Shinobi 3, Rocket Knight, Earthworm Jim, Phantasy Star 4, and the subject of today's video, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. A game so gigantic it had to be split into two parts. Now Sonic was already the face of the Genesis thanks to not only Sonic 1, but also the powerhouse that was Sonic 2. So Sonic 3 was definitely set up for success, but with a game not being fully complete on launch thanks to the split, it would feel a bit lacking compared to its predecessors. Although justified with its gigantic level and amazing sprite work, there was still a need for the rest of the game. This is where the lock-on technology would come in, as the second part, Sonic and Knuckles, would be released with the other half of the content. However, sticking the Sonic 3 cartridge on top of the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge would give you the full game the way it was originally intended to be, and now it's more massive than even Sonic 2. And while the graphics will not be as impressive as Sonic CD because it didn't use the CD technology, it still looks great for something running on the base Sega Genesis. In the midst of a time where the transition to 3D was starting, with Sega releasing 3D games in the arcades like Virtua Fighter and Daytona USA, and the launch of the PlayStation, Sonic 3K would be one of the last major games on the system and one of the last major games of the fourth generation, pushing the limits of the 16-bit consoles. Hi, my name is Jay, and you're tuning into the J Blast Network. As we take a blast to the past, take a look at what is seen to be the prodigy of the Sega Genesis, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. For this video, I'm only going over the full version of the game, though I will talk about the parts that were separated. On gameplay, not much has changed mechanic-wise besides characters. In fact, that's the big thing here. Multiple playable characters with different abilities. Before in Sonic 2 you could play as Tails, but he couldn't fly. However, now Tails can fly and Knuckles can glide and climb walls. This isn't just something to make the game easier either, as level design was made to accommodate all playstyles, and there are even exclusive areas for all characters. As for Sonic himself, he now has an instant shield. When you jump twice, you will gain a shield for an instant of a second. When used right, it can be useful against enemies with spikes or hazards on them, letting you go in for a hit, adding a bit of strategy to combat. You can also use extra abilities that the others can't from the elemental shields. Elemental shields are new to this game. There's fire, water, and lightning. Fire makes you immune to lava and other fire hazards and gives Sonic an air dash. Water shields make you immune to drowning and some underwater attacks and give Sonic a ground bounce. And lightning can absorb nearby rings and give Sonic the ability to double jump. Having these abilities makes all the playable characters feel unique and warm playing. No one feels left out here in terms of a moveset. The balance comes from the speed, with Sonic of course being the fastest and being able to use the most of the momentum, while Knuckles is the slowest and has the lowest jump. But with his glide and climbing ability, he has more options for maneuvering around the level, along with being able to punch some walls in. And Tails jumps the highest and can fly over many obstacles, but he can't attack while flying in the air. You know we've made great characters when gameplay alone can be the most iconic part of them, and it's one of the major components to why Sonic 3 is a huge improvement from Sonic 2. Another component is the save system. Finally, 4 major games in, and we have a save system in the base game. This also acts as a level select once you've beaten the game, so if you miss something like the Chaos Emeralds for instance, you can go back and grab them. As for the Chaos Emeralds themselves, this is the best method of collecting them, at least getting to the special stage. In order to get to the special stage, you have to find a giant ring in the levels. There are many to be found, and this really encourages exploration without giving stipulations to the player like in Sonic 2, with having to have 50 rings in order to activate a checkpoint. The special stages themselves control the best out of the previous game. However, I don't think the method is fun. You have to jog around this 3D plane and collect blue spears. If you collect the red spears, you're sent back to the stage. It's simple and it works, but I never got that much enjoyment out of these. I know these stages are very popular, but I would have much rather seen an improvement for what Sonic CD and Sonic 2 did. These stages are harmless, but sometimes too simple and easy is not as good as hard and complex. You do still get something for collecting 50 rings and hitting the checkpoint, which is a bonus game where you can get rings, extra lives, and additional points to your score. These serve as a breather for the stages, especially when you're low on rings. Multiplayer is still here too. You can now have the other player carry Sonic and fly with him as Tails, giving player 2 more options than just being left behind on the screen. This makes the game have actual co-op. There's also a versus mode where you can race with all 3 characters on original short levels, being Azure Lake, Balloon Park, Chrome Gadget, Desert Palace, and Endless Mine. It's a shame these levels weren't expanded in the main game because they all look good and have great music, but the design is very simple just for racing. Still, this is a big step from the multiplayer in Sonic 2. Sonic 3 really brought the bar up for this formula and basically perfected its style, which makes it rise above the previous games. The story in Sonic 3 is more involved than the previous games. Back then you had some brief cutscenes near the end, with not much happening in animation, mostly Sonic chasing Eggman. Sonic CD changed this a bit by having animated cutscenes in the beginning and the end of the game, but the in-game cutscenes were still simple and sparse. Sonic 3 on the other hand has more going on in its cutscenes with unique animations and the characters interacting with each other more. This isn't something as advanced as what would be in future hardware, like there's no text or dialogue at all, but it does its best to actually tell a story through its gameplay. The story actually starts before the events of the game. After Sonic 2, the Death Egg fell out of the sky and on the Angel Island, a floating island in the sky that was synced into the ocean by the Death Egg. Knuckles, the island's guardian, senses the disturbance and goes to find out what happened to protect the Master Emerald. The Master Emerald being the object of Knuckles' garden, which is stronger than the Chaos Emeralds, and was the cause of a catastrophe that nearly wiped out Knuckles' race of echidnas. It was said that a dragon caused that destruction and that it would come back someday. Feeling suspicious that this egg thing was the dragon, Knuckles sets out to stop it. But what comes out of the machine is Dr. Eggman himself. Eggman proceeds to trick Knuckles into thinking he was just trying to help the island and that Sonic is actually coming to destroy it and take the Master Emerald. Knuckles, being as gullible as he is, believes Dr. Eggman and heads out to find Sonic, while Eggman begins rebuilding the Death Egg with the plans of using the Master Emerald as a power source. Meanwhile, our heroes Sonic and Tails set out for Angel Island after Sonic discovers a ring that reminded him of an ancient civilization that tried to take the Master Emerald but were wiped out by a god. Of course, Sonic was intrigued by this, especially since he found all of the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 2. So him and Tails are going there to investigate. When they are near the island, Sonic transforms into Super Sonic to try to flex on Tails and show him the Chaos Emerald's power. However, once he reaches the island, Sonic is caught off guard by Knuckles, who takes the emeralds and hides them in the special zones around the island. Now, just how was Knuckles able to do this? Well, I always think at this time, Knuckles knew the danger of the emerald's power and used the Master Emerald's power to help him accomplish his feat. Plus, Sonic was also, once again, he was caught off guard. This leaves Sonic and Tails off to go search for the emeralds and find out what Knuckles and Eggman are up to. And this is the start of a grand adventure. Now, what I just said is in the Japanese manual, and some of the stuff is on the wiki. The only part that's in game is Sonic losing the Chaos Emeralds. Again, this is most likely due to limitations of the hardware, but you see the developers wanted to branch out the narrative of these games as they kept getting made. It always seemed like go big or go home. That philosophy applies to the levels too. Sonic 3's levels are huge, gigantic even. Just look at the comparison from the first levels of the previous games to the first level here. This design philosophy is great because, as I said earlier, it opens up so much opportunity to explore these levels. This game is more open than some 3D open world titles. That's just how grand the levels are. To start out, we have just Angel Island, the entrance to the island, a tropical jungle area that breaks the trope of Green Hill aesthetics from the previous game. It also breaks another trope of the first level. When you get halfway through the first act, the mini-boss shows up and then, boom, the whole island is set on fire. There aren't any fire hazards, but this really shakes up the aesthetics. This continues on into the second act as well, which at one point has a freaking airship shoot missiles at you. Eggman was not playing around this time. This is how it usually goes. The first act is in one area of the zone, while the second act is in another area of that zone. You usually transition to these other parts because of something that happens in the level. Act 1 has a mini boss, and Act 2 has the zone's boss. Upon completion of Act 2, you are treated to a cutscene of how you transition to the next zone. These events really add to the world building of the game, as everything on the island feels connected because we see how we got there. In the level, we know what story the zone is trying to tell. Angel Island being telling of this, as it shows that once again Eggman is up to no good, but this time we actually see the damage in real time, besides just robots or a base on the island. Sonic 3 tells its story through its environments, and I don't think people give the game enough credit for that. As for what's the cause of most of the transition, well, it's usually Knuckles, who has traps set up to stop Sonic and Tails on their journey. But if you play as Knuckles, he actually has completely different routes in the level that only he can go through because, well, he knows the island. He actually has easier methods of getting through each zone. This makes Knuckles' playthrough the most unique after Sonic, and it makes sense because he knows the island. Also, his story takes place after Sonic's, but we'll go into that a bit later. For now, we move on to the second zone, Hydrocity. Not Hydro City, Hydrocity. An underground labyrinth filled with water. This level breaks the usual standards of the water level, as you can go very fast and even run on the water at points, mostly in Act 2, but Act 1 is still very fast paced. Hydrocity is one of the game's best levels because it redeems the stigma of water levels in many people's minds. Also, if you play as Tails or Knuckles, they both can swim here. It works just like flying or gliding would. Getting knocked out of Hydrocity by a water current, we end up in the Marble Garden Zone, a large area filled with ruins of the island, and don't worry, there's no lava here, but there are tar pits, pulleys, and spinners you ride that help you break certain obstacles in the level. This level is another great one. It's one of the biggest zones in the game and has so many layers and elevation. The only issue here being the crushing obstacles, especially when the earthquake occurs, as one pixel off can ruin your life. But that's more of a gameplay issue than the level. It's something that the classic style games in the franchise have always faced. What's cool here is if you play as Sonic, the boss fight will be a tag team of Tails flying, throwing Sonic at the boss. We need more tag team stuff like this. And if you play the other characters, they actually fight a different boss, since, you know, they're not carrying Sonic. After getting back on the land, we reach Carnival Night Zone. Not quite a casino, but more like a state fair with some bumpers thrown in. This zone is one of the weakest in the game. We all know those stupid cylinders going up and down. It's easy to get across once you know what to do, but you gotta admit, we were all stuck in that crap when we were younger. As for the level itself, it just has too many narrow hallways with bumpers all over the place, making it feel too claustrophobic. However, it's pretty short for Knuckles and doesn't even have a zone boss at the end of the level for him, while Sonic and Tails have to go through the part with the power shut off with more obstacles like being underwater. A bit of a slow haul from the previous zones, but it still beats out some of the worst from the previous games. Launching from the carnival, we end up in the best level of the game, and one of the best levels in the entire series. Yeah, this level is freaking awesome. The theme, the music, the design, all just comes together to make a perfect level. From skating down the ice slopes, exploring an ice cave, and running on top of the glacier, Ice Cap continues to keep up the speed all the way, along with some great areas to explore. Sadly, Knuckles doesn't have a snowboarding section, but he does have his own unique area to explore in both acts. Ice Cap just shreds the competition. Once you go through the snow, we end up in Launch Base, the last area of the 3 side of the game, but it's only part of the halfway point of the full game. Here we see the Death Egg being worked on in the background. Eggman made a whole base to work on the ship, and yet Knuckles still didn't question anything. He must really be an idiot. This level is like a pyramid with some machinery mixed in, while the second act takes place on parts of the Death Egg's construction. If you play as Knuckles, you don't see the Death Egg there at all, and take a different route and fight a different boss, since his story takes place after these events. This level is a good midpoint, as we get to see the danger ahead, but as the last level in the original Sonic 3, I can see how people had some questions. The final part is Sonic and Tails stopping the Death Egg from fully launching again, which in the original game you fought Big Arms, the final boss, while here you fight this mess of a contraption, which is a lot easier. You fight Big Arms as Knuckles here, so he isn't gone fully. Big Arms is the better boss and has the better theme. After stopping the pre-launch of the Death Egg, Sonic and Tails jump off of the base and head into the other half of the game, the Knuckles side. The Sonic and Knuckles sides gets much more challenging than the previous. This must have been a shock for people who only got the Knuckles side, because these levels were meant to be harder since they were the last ones, but going at them first feels a bit off. The first level here is Mushroom Hill, but before we start, there is a secret that Knuckles is hiding. Following him takes you to the Hidden Palace, where the Master Emerald is supposed to be, along with some other giant emeralds. You see, once you collect the Chaos Emeralds in the first half, you unlock Super Sonic, who actually has an activation method this time by jumping twice, so you can plan when you want to transform. Super Sonic is the same as he was in the 2, nothing really changed. However, Knuckles can also turn super, and he acts the same as Super Sonic. Tails doesn't get any form from the Chaos Emeralds, which may have been bad if the Super Emeralds didn't exist. The Super Emeralds are the colorless emeralds in the Hidden Palace and can only be accessed by already collecting all of the Chaos Emeralds in the first part of the game. You collect them the same as you collect Chaos Emeralds, except you choose the order you want to go in when you go in the giant ring. Collecting all of these will give you the hyper forms of Sonic and Knuckles and the super form of Tails. These are the ultimate forms of the characters because they don't just do the same things as the super forms, they actually come with new moves that completely break the game at times. Sonic has an air dash that acts as a sonic boom that screen nukes enemies on the screen. Knuckles can cause earthquakes from flying to a wall that also screen nukes everyone on the screen. And Tails, man, Tails, he has flickies that can attack the enemy for you. He really is the easy mode of the game. These forms take a long time to get, but they are worth it, and now with save states and level selects, you can go back to any level and use those forms instead of losing them after one playthrough. Again, save states really bring this game up from the previous ones, and the hyper forms are some of the best additions to the game. Super forms will kind of wear off once you realize it's just invisibility, but with some new abilities of the hyper forms, it gives them a greater purpose in gameplay and gives you more of an incentive to get all of the emeralds. Back to the levels. Mushroom Hill is like the calm before the storm of the rest of the game. It's a breeze to go through. This is probably because it was the first level of the second half of the game. The big thing of the level is air. You be bouncing on mushroom, launching off of swings, and using levers to get to higher elevation. At this point in the game, in the original Sonic and Knuckles, the game would play Knuckles' introduction cutscene for his events to take place after the game, which is him almost being killed by the Egg Robo, which is why most of his fights have him fighting the Egg Robo instead of Eggman, because at this point Eggman is gone from the island. On bosses, let's go ahead and talk about that. Before, bosses would all face the same problem of being able to brute force them with rings or being too easy, especially for Sonic CD. It was rare that a boss would put up much of a fight, but here it seems Sonic Team found some workaround for it. First off, I don't know if they changed anything, but it feels like rings scatter more. If they scatter off screen, that means they're gone for good. Second, the bosses themselves are much harder to fight, with most not being able to be beaten in the traditional sense. Many come with gimmicks with the way you're supposed to attack them, so brute forcing is not a viable option. Some of these bosses will kick your ass if you're not careful, and honestly, I like this change because it means bosses matter and you gotta earn your way to the next level. They don't feel like a boring task you have to complete, but rather a final test of the area you were in. Not all the bosses are challenging, but most will put up a good fight. Another great change from previous titles. On to the next one. Sonic and Tails board the ship Eggman is in, which is the Flying Battery. This level gets worse for me every time I play it. I love the theme, but the level itself, especially Act 1, can drag. The interior area slows things down too much, and there's not much else going on outside of the ship. The level can feel cramped sometimes, and has many crushing traps and tight platforming. Definitely one of the weaker zones in the game. Jumping off of the airship, Sonic and Tails land in the Sandopolis zone. I have mixed feelings on this zone because the first act is amazing. It's one of my favorite desert levels of all time, and I usually hate desert levels. There are good gimmicks here with zip lines in the temple areas. The bad part comes in Act 2. I like that we are inside a pyramid that spawned from the sands, but it's a pain in the ass to go through. You gotta worry about these light levers because if you don't, the ghosts will start attacking you. There are also a lot of time puzzles and traps that make this level take forever to complete, and sometimes stuff looks so similar that I forget where I am. This zone dropped the ball at the end. Going deeper in the temple, We are reaching the core of the island with Lava Reef. Lava Reef is another great level, probably number 3 on the top 3 levels of this game. It's the longest level, but it's still enjoyable to go through, maneuvering around the lava sections, especially with the fire shield. In Act 2, the lava freezes over and you are in a mine under the island. I love this contrast as it shows that we're getting deeper to the core of the island, which holds its greatest power, the Master Emerald. It's here where the paths split. You're playing as Sonic and Tails to go deeper until you see the Death Egg stuck in the core and fight Eggman before he can reach the Hidden Palace. If you were Knuckles, you fight no boss and head straight to the Hidden Palace and then into the next level after that. The Hidden Palace is different from the cut level in Sonic 2. It's not really a full level no matter what playthrough, and this is the last chance you get to get the emeralds, as from here, no giant rings appear anymore. This will make sense later, but for now let's focus on what is in the palace. Sonic and Tails go into an area with a mural that looks like Super Sonic fighting a giant robot. It's here where they confront Knuckles after all this time messing with them in a great battle of rivals. And he's a jobber. Rival fights are usually something that Sonic Team struggles with usually, and it all started with CD. The race was cool here, but there wasn't an actual fight. And here Knuckles just lets you win basically. After Knuckles puts over Sonic, the group hears something going on in the Emerald Chamber, and of course, it's Eggman betraying Knuckles and taking the Master Emerald. Knuckles tries to stop him, but jobs to Eggman too, and realizes he was wrong about Sonic the entire time. From here on out, instead of being a laughing dickhead, Knuckles starts to act more serious like an actual guardian and takes Sonic and Tails to the Warp Spear as they phase onto Sky Sanctuary. Sky Sanctuary is unique because it only has one long act for Sonic and Tails and serves as the final boss area for Knuckles. Let's go over Sonic's part first. It's no surprise this level is iconic because of the story it sets up. Right as we start, we see the Death Egg rising out of the sky thanks to the power of the Master Emerald, and it begins sending robots out to fight us. Knuckles unlocks the bridge, and from there, the level begins. It's a constant race upward as you fight level's exclusive Bagnik, the Egg Robo, which is the main villain for most of Knuckles' story, which is also one of the last of its kind. We destroy the rest here at Sky Sanctuary. As you progress, you encounter Mecha Sonic, who will use some of the old machines from the previous games to fight you until you fight him without a machine. This guy has a really cool design and looks much darker than the previous Metal Sonics, but most may know him more for his role outside of the game as the main villain of Super Mario Bros. Z. I think that's where most of his iconic moments come from because this game is his first and last appearance in the games. And if you watch the show, you already know he was a powerhouse and just beating and killing everybody he saw. However, I'm judging the game, not fan works, so I can't give full credit for that here. He does make a better impression in Knuckles' campaign as he stole the Master Emerald using Egg Robo as a distraction to fight Knuckles, and even uses the Master Emerald to turn Super and fight Knuckles, which Knuckles can't even damage in his Super form until Mecha runs out of energy and reverts. Good thing he didn't master that power yet. And this also shows that Knuckles was just lucky in the beginning of the game. As for the level itself, it's very good and tests up a feeling of a race against time, as each time you progress, the level starts to shift and you can't go back down. This all culminates in a last-ditch effort to board the Death Egg by running on a collapsing tower and jumping aboard the ship, one of the coolest and most badass moments in the Sonic franchise. Now, we enter the Death Egg, which is actually a fully playable level this time. This level can be pretty tough with its anti-gravity mechanics and electricity. There's also these cool travel rings you can use to get around some areas. There are no giant rings here, however, and that is because we are no longer on Angel Island. Sky Sanctuary and Death Egg do not have giant rings because of that, and it makes sense narratively. Eggman wouldn't just have these things on the ship. The big obstacles here though are the bosses. Each one of them is a pain in the ass to deal with. The one I hate the most is the Death Eye. With it and its spike platforms in the small room, it becomes hell to dodge everything and keep up with your rings. I got so many game overs here when I was younger that this guy still gives me nightmares. The second boss is not as hard, but it's really gimmicky to hit. But that is not all. After dealing with those two, you have to fight the final boss, which is a giant Death Egg robot that tries to crush you with its fingers that you have to destroy. Then it will chase you, destroying the platforms behind you and shooting a freaking laser out to kill you. The laser is near the spot where you have to hit, so you have to strategize when you want to do damage. Then you have to chase Eggman down as he runs off with the Master Emerald, and if you slip up, you can die at this part, as the platform is still falling behind you. If you die at any of these points, you have to fight the boss fully with no rings. Yeah, this is brutal, but I'm not really upset about it. This challenge makes sense for the journey as you still have a chance to come here with rings before. The attack doesn't feel cheap like the Death Egg robot in Sonic 2. They feel well designed to be telegraphed by smarter players. You can beat this without getting hit, and even if you had a ring, you wouldn't want to take damage and face a knockback from any of these hits. Like I said earlier, Eggman was not playing around. That would be it if you didn't have the super or hyper forms. Having these gives you access to the true final boss in the Doomsday Zone, which is the chase between Sonic and Eggman, who is still using the power of the Master Emerald, so you have to use his own weapons against him to win the fight, because technically that power of the Master Emerald is stronger than the Chaos Emeralds. Oh man, I just love this setup and consistency to the power structure of the story. It makes Eggman feel like a real threat here. If you run out of rings, it's game over, so you have to collect the ones you see. After beating that form of the boss, Eggman loses power, and now he's just running away. You have to keep charging at him until you destroy the boss once and for all, saving the Master Emerald. Sonic takes the Master Emerald back to Angel Island, and it begins to rise again. With Knuckles thanking them for their help, a new friendship was formed, and this will be the beginning of Team Sonic. Sonic and Tails leave the island for the next adventure. As for Knuckles' story, after beating Super Mecha Sonic, the Sky Sanctuary collapses, but Knuckles is saved by Sonic in a tornado and also saves the Master Emerald, restoring peace to the island, showing that Sonic and Knuckles' rivalry has truly ended, for now at least. Overall, I think without each other, both sides can feel like something is missing, especially with the Knuckles side, because you're really just playing the ending of the game. There are definitely better levels on the 3 side, but K has great levels too. As for the story, it's great to see that Sonic Team tried to tell a narrative even with the limited hardware they had. You can tell they were very ambitious on all aspects of this game, and even though the story doesn't show much, it still shows enough to have some iconic moments that have lasted in many players' hearts since the game's release. It also sets up many elements of Sonic's world that will be used later. Although this game is seen as the end of an era, it definitely has a setup to start a new one. With as big of a game as Sonic 3 is, of course there was content that was cut and rearranged. To start, there are cheats that return from 2, really just a level select in the debug mode. These cheats can be very cryptic to enter and can even involve entering the levels to unlock. There are also an original level order just like the first game. This is most likely what the game would have been if it was never split. The big changes here is that the flying battery was supposed to take place between Carnival Night and Ice Cap, and at the end of the level, Sonic would have used the door from the ship to snowboard down the mountain. I can see why the levels were changed, because with the game split, they needed to be an even set of levels for those who got both games individually. Launch Base fits better as a final level to the first half because it involved a Death Egg relaunching, so they could still give an ending to the game without it being the real ending. Having Ice Cap as the final level would have not felt right. Also difficulty, because flying battery is more difficult than any of the levels in the first half of the game. Many fan mods have aimed to restore the cut content and even add stuff new like Sonic 3 Air, which allows you to play the original level layout if you want it. It's definitely worth checking these mods out as they improve the already amazing game just that much more. That's all for cut content. But another important detail that needs to be discussed is the game's soundtrack. Now, this was the first game to have the legendary music composer Jun Senoue for its soundtrack. Jun would do many of the Sonic game's soundtracks for future titles, but he really kicked it off here. There was also someone else involved with the music apparently, this being Michael Jackson. Yeah, Sonic was that big even back then. Michael was a fan of the games and even had his own game on the Genesis called Moonwalker, so he was on board to make music. Unfortunately, due to the allegation against him at the time, Sega wanted to distance themselves from him, so they would keep the music but rearrange it a bit. But if you're a fan of Michael and his music, you would know what songs he made just by listening to him. This controversy is why it's so hard to port Sonic 3 nowadays, as there are copyright issues with some of the music in the game. If they replaced them, which they did for the first PC port, it would let them release it, but honestly, the game would not be the same without it. Have a listen for yourself. If it wasn't apparent by now, I hope I was able to convey just how great Sonic 3K is. This game is one of the most ambitious games on the Sega Genesis, pushing the hardware to its limits. With its gigantic zones, amazing music, and simple albeit intriguing story, Sonic 3K sets itself on a pedestal among its contemporaries back then and even today. The technology back then didn't allow the positives I've mentioned to be at its fullest potential, but Sonic team worked around those limitations and was able to make a game that defined the franchise going forward. Just think about this. Even beyond just the multiple playable characters with unique abilities, you also have so much lore that was set up that would be used for future stories and spin-offs. Comics at the time would use Knuckles and the history of Angel Island to make new stories, along with the rivalry of Sonic and Knuckles continuing. The Death Egg would become a looming threat in some of the comics as Eggman's ultimate weapon. The power of the Emeralds would also be used, and even have fights in the Super and Hyper forms. But the most important effect of the lore that Sonic 3K sets up is that the history of Angel Island would be significant in the future games, not just spin-offs, but big titles like Sonic Adventure. This was really the start of a focus on world building, and most of it came from the levels themselves rather than dialogue. I point this out because I feel there's a misconception with how the stories were written back then. Gameplay was always the focus first, of course, but there was a reason you went to where you did. Not many platformers at the time had lore like this. Mega Man would really only start to do more with Mega Man X, which released the same year. This is what defines Sonic, as I said in the previous videos when comparing to Mario. Especially as kids, you look at what they're doing. Most of the time, Mario is just saving the princess, getting power-ups, and running through the Mushroom Kingdom, while Sonic's adventures were more expansive and had higher stakes, literally saving the world from roboticization. To me, this is what made Sonic cool. Not just the characters or the levels, but the world itself. It's what made him stand out from the rest of the generic platformers at the time, being a leader in the genre that many would try to copy. As the great YouTuber Jay's Reviews said, Sonic is distinctive, and he always has been, since the very start. Sonic 3K just takes all of that to another level. Nowadays, it can be hard to play Sonic 3K as besides the PC release, it hasn't been released or remastered like the other titles because of the music issue. It's sad because developers of the enhanced ports want to port the game and add new content, like having the multiplayer stages be full levels in the main game. Hopefully one day there can be some workaround for this, and we can get this game back on digital store shelves. Overall, I love Sonic 3K. As I said before, I played these on the Mega Collection when I was younger, and Sonic 3K always intrigued me because of how big it was. You really could get lost in the world to set up, and that's a great thing because you get lost by exploring, not by frustration. It's because of this, there's no question to why the game seems to be everyone's favorite, including one of mine too. Sonic 3K really is the Prodigy of the Sega Genesis, and really hammers in that Sega does what Nintendo don't. Alright y'all, thanks for watching the video. I want to shout out my friend Flaccid Freddy on Twitter. He helped me get some footage for this game so I can put this video out faster. Specifically the Tails footage. He does animations on his Twitter, so if you like this stuff, check him out. Really appreciate his help on this video. If it wasn't for him, it would have taken a longer time to put this out and getting some gameplay. Anyway guys, thanks again for watching the video. You already know we got the big video coming up, the season 1 finale of Final Fantasy. So I'm gonna say this to you guys. I want you to check that out when it drops. It's gonna drop later this month, and it's been 1 year since I started this YouTube channel. I actually want the Final Fantasy 7 video out by the first year, but plans just didn't work out. But it's okay because we're getting out now. And once again, I'm gonna say this: thank you guys. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for liking the content. I appreciate all you that watch the videos, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. It's gonna be great. Also, in the meantime, while you're waiting for my videos, check out Jay's Reviews. I mentioned him in this video because he actually was an inspiration for me making these Sonic videos, and some other YouTubers like Son Call Me Johnny. But his quote of Sonic is distinctive really resonated with me and really pushed me to keep making these videos on the franchise. So check his channel out. He's doing the Sonic retrospective right now. I don't know the guy. I'm not paid by the guy, but he's just a cool YouTuber I watch. So like I said, bro, check him out. Anyway, guys, this is the J Blast Network signing out. And don't forget, you gotta believe.
This is the J Blast Network rolling out. Have peace amongst the panic.